Hello, this is Rebecca with OsteoStrong. Again, my name is Rebecca Merrill. I am a board certified holistic nutritionist. I'm also a certified personal trainer, as well as I have a couple other certifications in behavior change, as well as fitness nutrition and corrective exercise. So today I'm here to discuss bones, sleep, and stress. So those of you that may not be familiar with OsteoStrong, a little bit about what we do here. So OsteoStrong is a unique musculoskeletal strengthening program that can help participants improve many different things. From bone density, we can help to reduce joint and back pain, improve balance and posture, as well as to promote overall longevity. So we do have a unique program here that helps with those, but the biggest thing is that it really can help to increase bone density, which is important as we age to keep our strength, our muscle, as well as to help us to avoid balance and improve our posture. So many benefits of using OsteoStrong. Today, again, we are talking about bones, sleep, and stress. Key factors for optimum nutrition and bone health is one of the things we're going to start with. So all of those nutrients and factors that we want to really be keeping in mind to make sure that our bones stay strong and healthy. We're also going to explore how stress can impact our health. Many people do underestimate both stress and sleep and how they can really help to keep our body running optimally, which is critically important for us to keep our bone strength as well. So I always like to include this. This is what I call the foundation for optimum health. Because, traditionally we've all thought, yes, I understand exercise is important and eating well, but there's many factors that really are included with this holistic mindset. That would also include sleep, having a connection both to our community and to nature in a bigger power. Our mindset, how we think, how we talk to ourselves, how we approach stress in our daily life is really critically important to our overall health, as well as having some sort of spiritual connection. Some people are religious, and that spiritual connection could be that way, but it could be a spiritual connection with nature or whatever higher power that you really choose to acknowledge. So when we're talking specifically about bone health, there's a few things that I like to focus on. Number one is the micronutrients. Now, micronutrients are all those vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients and different things that help to keep our body healthy. We all know a lot about calcium, vitamin D, magnesium, as well as vitamin K, and they're an important factor with bone health specifically. But I always like to illustrate that it's not just those specific nutrients that play a role in bone health directly, but we really want to make sure that our body is running optimally. And that is going to mean that we are going to want to have all of our micronutrients, all of our vitamins, minerals, really running at optimum levels, not just avoiding deficiency, not just getting an adequate amount, but you really want to make sure your body is running ideally. And that will be with all of your micronutrients at optimal levels. Protein is critically important. Our bones are made up of protein. Our muscles are made up of protein. So we really need to make sure that we are getting enough protein in our body that we can actually keep the bone density that we already have, as well as to increase bone density if you're doing something like OsteoStrong that will trigger an increase in osteogenesis. Now, the last thing I'd like to touch on is absorption, because all of this only makes sense if we're actually absorbing things in our body. And there's lots of different factors that can affect how well we do absorb our nutrients. Now, as I mentioned, we all are pretty aware calcium, vitamin D, vitamin K, magnesium all play a role directly in our bone health. They all have little different roles, and they are all very dependent on each other to operate well. But we do want to have all of our vitamins and minerals at optimum levels. So how do you do that? Best way to get vitamins and minerals is to eat a lot of different plant foods. Fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, whole grains, and legumes are really some of the most nutrient-dense things that we can really have out there. And you want to look at your food as, what kind of nutrients is this providing me? optimum nutrition is going to be getting the most nutrients out of our food for the least amount of calories. Now, of course, we do need to have calories in our diet. That is what provides us fuel to have energy. But you want to really be looking at your food as, what is this giving me? What kind of things is it providing my body with so it can be healthy and run well? And I always am an advocate for trying to get everything that we can from whole foods, getting those whole foods that are minimally processed as close to nature as that originally food came from. But life happens, and sometimes it's really hard to be eating ideally every single day. So I do recommend trying to find a good multivitamin that can give you a little bit of insurance to make sure that your body is getting everything it needs every day. Protein, as I mentioned, critically important. Our bones and muscles and many components of our body are made up of protein. So we need to make sure that we're eating enough and absorbing enough of it that we can really have all of that available for building bone and muscle. Now, there's lots of information out there on how much protein to get. My personal recommendation is going to be you want about 1 to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. This is going to be more than just the FDA's recommendation for adequate intake. Again, we don't just want adequate amount, we want optimal amounts of protein. So 1 to 2 grams per kilogram, or 1 to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight is a really good idea to have enough to make sure that your body can build muscle and build bone. Now, I'm a big advocate for plant-based eating. I think that it can be very, very healthy and nutritious. But if we are only consuming plant foods, you do need to have about 30% more protein from your food, because plant source protein is a little bit harder for your body to absorb and digest. It's not as bioavailable as animal protein can be. So it's easiest if you're consuming some animal protein, but vegetarian and vegans can absolutely get there. You just need to be a little bit more conscious of it. You want to get about 30% more. So with that in mind, I would say if you're a vegetarian or vegan, you want to be getting closer to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. If you're eating animal food, meat and eggs and things mixed in, you can probably get kind of in that 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. So one thing that can be really valuable is to track your food if you want to know how much protein you're eating. There's lots of food tracking apps out there. I have one I really like. It's free and it's called Chronometer, Cronometer. And it can be really valuable because it will not only track your micronutrients and your macronutrients. So it'll tell you how many calories you're eating, but it'll also let you know all of your vitamins and minerals if you're eating adequate enough related to the previous slide, but also let you know how much protein you're getting. Because we do have protein in our plant foods. It can be a little tricky to try to calculate that for everything you eat. So putting it all into a food tracking app can be very beneficial. As I mentioned, absorption is important, because if we're doing everything right, but we're not absorbing our food, it really isn't meaning anything for our body. If you have any inflammation in the gut specifically, that can absolutely affect the absorption of your nutrients. Now, there's some foods that tend to trigger a little more inflammation. Wheat and dairy can be a little bit more inflammatory for many people. But most importantly is pay attention to yourself. If you have gastrointestinal issues when you eat certain foods, that's probably an indication that your gut is inflamed and you're probably not absorbing your nutrients properly. So pay attention to how you feel. If you do have any of those reactions to certain foods, then that might be a good indication that you don't want to include those foods into your diet. Now, different nutrients can also compete for absorption by the receptor sites. Some vitamins and minerals can synergize with each other and actually promote absorption of the other vitamin or mineral, and some can compete for those same sites. So if you're consuming certain vitamins and minerals together that compete for absorption, you're not going to get as much out of either of those. A good example with specific to bone health is that vitamin D and vitamin K can both be competing with each other for absorption in the gut. So I know it's tricky because all of these bone health supplements combine vitamin D and vitamin K together. And it's important to realize that when you're putting all of those together, that you may not be getting as much out of each of those. So it is something to think about. We do carry a line of products here, which has an anti-competition formula. They are nutrients multivitamin, and they do have an AM and a PM. So they have actually separated the nutrients that compete for absorption and put together the ones that synergize with each other. And that can be a really great way to ensure that you're getting the most out of your multivitamin. Now, protein is interesting because when we consume protein, our gut has to break it down into the original amino acids so that it can use those amino acids to rebuild the bone and muscle or whatever components of the body it's looking to create. But the enzyme that digests protein is also made up of protein. So sometimes as we age, we might have not had enough protein, maybe through illness or just not getting enough through our diet. And we might not have enough of the protein to create that enzyme. So oftentimes people, as they age or like I said, through illness, don't have enough of the protein enzyme to actually break down their protein effectively. So that can be a challenge. So sometimes just a little bit of supplementation of a raw amino acid form can help to boost that amino acid pool so that we have enough to create these enzymes to help us digest our protein as well. And again, I just want to reiterate that proper consumption doesn't mean anything if you're not actually absorbing these nutrients. Your body is not going to be receiving and able to use these nutrients to run well if we are not absorbing them. So really important to think about. Now, we are going to talk a little bit about stress. Stress is very important to our overall health as well as our nutrition profile. Hans Selye, which is a pioneering endocrinologist, he is actually known to be the father of stress research. And he had a really amazing quote that I think is very valuable. It says that it is not stress that kills us, but it is our reaction to it. You can have a stressful life or what seems to be stressful on the outside, but if you have the right mindset and not letting it affect your body, then it may not be causing detriment. So I just want to illustrate that it's not necessarily the stress that's killing you, but it's how you are reacting to it. Now, Selye did address two different types of stress. He identified that we have some stress that can hurt us, as well as some stress can actually be beneficial for us. Now, distress is that level of stress that causes a negative reaction to the mind and body. Examples of distress can be working against a deadline, or having difficulty in our relationships, an illness, someone in our family that's sick that we're taking care of and we're worried about. A lot of those things can cause distress. Now, eustress is the good stuff. It can have positive effects that can energize and motivate us to make change. Some great examples of eustress are exercise. Exercise is actually causing stress in the body, but it's a good kind of stress. It can help to energize us. It can help us to build resilience, make us stronger. Other types of eustress can, be different interactions with people. There's just lots of good examples, because I like to think about this because not all stress is bad. Again, there can be some very positive effects to it. When you have distress in the body, it can cause fatigue. It can absolutely affect our mood and how we react to others and different things. It can create physical ailments like shortness of breath and digestive issues. How many of you have ever had an upset stomach walking into a difficult conversation or before you had to give a presentation? That is definitely a connection. We have this vagus nerve that connects our mind to our gut, and what we're thinking directly affects our digestion. Now, the positive side of stress, the eustress, can actually increase our focus and resilience, create excitement and motivation. Historically, we were hunter-gatherers, and we were trying to get our own food and just basically survive. So some of the positive effects of stress helped us to zone in on our ability to focus so that we could hunt more effectively, gave us that little bit of adrenaline so we could actually achieve what we were trying to by finding the animal and killing them for our food. So there can be a lot of really positive sides of stress. And again, how we perceive our stress determines how it affects us. It's not necessarily always going to be a bad thing, but how we have our mind, that's going to be the most important. Now, if we are in a state of chronic distress, that negative stress, we are having all these stress hormones that are being released into our body, like cortisol and epinephrine, and those can have really detrimental effects to our body. Metabolic disorder is a big example. There's a few different things that create a few different sides of metabolic disorder, but a big one is insulin resistance, because when we are under a state of distress, we release cortisol. Cortisol stimulates our body to produce glucose so that we have energy to be able to deal with this response to whatever stressful stimulus we have. So it can actually put glucose into your body, and that too much glucose can in turn cause us to our cells to not listen to insulin, and can create insulin resistance, which is the first phase of type 2 diabetes. So it can create a lot of issues with our metabolism. It can increase blood pressure. Prolonged release of epinephrine and that increased stroke volume and heart rate can really help to affect our blood pressure long term. And this is a really important one. It can have abnormal bone regeneration and collagen synthesis. And this last one, calcium deficiency. These two aspects can directly affect your ability to have a normal bone density, your ability to regenerate bone if you're doing something like OsteoStrong. So chronic distress can really have some negative effects, even specifically to bone density. Now, there are a couple different types of stress, and they can affect our digestion, definitely. If we are in our stressful situation, that stimulates our sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system is known for fight or flight. Fight or flight is our response that we are in a stressful situation. We are either going to run from the dinosaur or we are ready to fight. And that sympathetic nervous system stimulation can cause these detrimental effects in the long run. Now, the other side of the sympathetic nervous system is the parasympathetic nervous system. We want to have that rest and digest stimulated, where we're calm, we're able to absorb and digest our food. The parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for that. So if we're in constant state of sympathetic stimulation, we are in fight or flight. We are not in rest and digest. So we need to really work to be more in the the parasympathetic nervous system to make sure that we are absorbing our food properly. Some things that can do. I know that our world is very prone to overstimulation. A lot of us have work schedules and life and activities, and there's so many things that can really stimulate stress in our body. So there's a few ideas of things you can work on if you want to prioritize lowering your stress. Having different activities that you enjoy. Find the things that make you feel whole and happy. That is a great way to help de-stress. Make time for downtime. Don't put it off. Don't think, oh, I don't have time, I can't do that. If you don't make time for downtime, your body is not going to be able to function properly and be able to withstand this long-term stress. I personally am a big fan of yoga, and I've identified a couple different styles of yoga that can be a little bit more relaxing. I love Yoga Nidra. It's a little bit, I like to say kind of like sleep yoga. You basically lay for 45 minutes with a guided meditation, maybe a sound healing, and it can really help get you into that deep meditative state to calm the brain, stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. Yin and restorative yoga are also more of relaxing choices that you can seek out. Now, meditation, prayer, if you prefer, can also be very calming for the mind. It's just really slowing things down, settling the brain, settling some of the thoughts that are constantly going in our mind. And nature is a profound healer. Nature can be one of the best ways to help de-stress. And nature and mindfulness can kind of go hand in hand. Mindfulness is all about slowing down to the present moment. So sometimes I like to combine that mindfulness when I am out in nature. Maybe you can just sit on a park bench, watch the clouds go by, listen to the birds chirping, feel the wind on your skin. It's seeing what senses you're experiencing right now. And when you combine them in nature, it can be very effective at lowering that stress level. Now, breath exercises. Our breathing is very powerful. So if you can engage or have a couple different types of breath exercises that can help to really stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system that can help to calm you down in times of increased stress. One that I like is called box breathing. You just basically inhale for a count of 4, hold your breath for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, and then pause for a count of 4, and then you can repeat it. That breath exercise can really be effective at stimulating the parasympathetic, calming you down, calming that vagus nerve, so that you can get into more of the rest and digest mode. There are some other things that you can use to help support de-stressing. Tryptophan is the amino acid that is present in a lot of poultry like turkey, which is why a lot of us get a little bit sleepy and relaxed on Thanksgiving after a big dose of tryptophan. It is the precursor for serotonin. So this is the amino acid that our body uses to create that feel-good neurotransmitter, serotonin. Another thing that can help is make sure that you take a high-quality multivitamin, because stress is not only using up a lot of vitamins and minerals to help create those stress hormones, it also is preventing us from absorbing it as much. So taking a good quality multivitamin can really help to ensure that your body has all of the vitamins and minerals that it needs. There are some herbal remedies as well. Lavender, valerian root is very calming. Lemon balm, passion flower. There's one that I didn't include on here, but ashwagandha can also be great at relieving stress and calming the mind and body. And then you can also talk to your doctor. There's some other options out there. GABA is also an inhibitory neurotransmitter that can be very calming and kind of offset some of those overstimulating neurotransmitters. So that can be a good option for you. L-theanine is also very calming. But even though these are a more natural source, I still recommend discussing them with your doctor. As with any supplement, you do want to discuss with your doctor if that's going to be a right appropriate dosage for you, as well as make sure there's no other contraindications with any other medications or any other ailments that you might have. Now, always keep in mind, prescription medications are there as well. And I'm not quick to say that prescription is going to be the answer in dealing with stress, but depending on where you're at, sometimes having that little bit of support through a prescription medication to get you through a difficult time might be appropriate for you. So please discuss with your doctor if there are any prescriptions that might be able to help you as well. And then I also encourage you to do your due diligence and research, be aware of the side effects, but not all prescriptions are necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes they can be very appropriate in helping you dealing with certain times of your life. Sleep, on to our next part of the discussion today. Adults need about 7 or more hours of sleep each night. And more than 1/3 of adult Americans do not get that. This study came from the sleepfoundation.org, and I honestly think that it could be a lot higher than that based on my personal experiences. And why are we not sleeping? What is the problem with this? Is that we are constantly stimulated. We have screens, there's constant noise, light. We are no longer dependent on the sun to help regulate our body and our moods. We're constantly having fluorescent lights, screens, all of that stuff that's affecting our brain and keeping us from being able to calm down. A lot of people use alcohol that affects your sleep. Caffeine is very detrimental to your sleep. And people don't always realize the half-life of caffeine, I want to say, is between 4 to 7 hours. So even if you had a few cups of coffee in the morning, that caffeine could still be affecting you later when it's getting close to bedtime before you actually can rid it from your body. So caffeine really does affect. And nutrition habits do as well. Eating a large meal right before bed can absolutely affect your sleep. So definitely need to be aware of how you feel in the timing of your food. Now, sleep. I got a lot of this information from Dr. Matthew Walker's book called Why We Sleep. I found it to be incredibly enlightening. If you're looking for more information on sleep, I highly recommend it. He discusses that there are basically 4 to 6 90-minute cycles of sleep per night that include both rapid eye movement and non-rapid eye movement. Rapid eye movement tends to be more where we have our dreams, and that non-REM sleep is kind of the other part of that. But the phase 3 non-REM sleep is the most critical thing. We get a lot of our deep sleep in this phase. And unfortunately, as we get older, we don't get as much of that anymore. So it can be very critical, and it's really important to foster a good sleep hygiene so that you can get the most out of both phases, because REM and non-REM sleep are both very critical in our brains. There's different functions that occur during that time. And if you are getting a lot of deep sleep but no REM sleep, that can be detrimental, as well as the other way around. So you definitely want to be aware of getting a good quality full night of sleep. Now, a lot of us have heard that our circadian rhythm, heard about circadian rhythm, but what really is it? And it is just basically our biological 24-hour cycle. We as humans have evolved to be awake during the day when we can see and optimize our own special functions best, and then sleep at night when we don't see as well, where other animals traditionally that do have better night vision could be out hunting. We have determined, our ancestors, that that's the time that we come inside, hunker down, and ultimately get our rest. So their circadian rhythm does control other rhythmic patterns. It can affect our eating, our moods, our body temperature, metabolism, and hormones. So this 24-hour biological cycle really does affect a lot of our overall function of the body. If we are not getting enough sleep, there are many different things. And again, I do want to mention Dr. Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep. It is very profound and really does a great job of illustrating very many studies that can help support a lot of these claims I'm using here today, because it is so detrimental. Sleep is truly the foundation of everything in our health and wellness. If we are not getting enough sleep, we are not going to be functioning as well as we need to. So one of the biggest things, if you don't get enough sleep, you are not going to be functioning mentally as well as you could be. Your memory will not be as well. Your creativity, learning is huge. There's so many different studies on how much sleep affects our ability to learn and retain information. So, a lot of times people will tell me, like, I get by, I only need 6 hours of sleep, it's just fine. But I think that when you say that, you don't necessarily realize at what detriment your brain might not be operating. Like, you might get by on 6 hours of sleep, but are you reaching that optimal potential that your brain really could be functioning at? Could be doing so much better. Not getting enough sleep can also compromise your immunity. Many disease factors go up with insufficient sleep. Big risk of heart disease, diabetes, cancer, dementia, those big diseases that end up killing us in the long run are definitely related to not getting enough sleep. Decreased physical performance. I think anyone who exercises regularly or even come into OsteoStrong knows that if you work out, or if you didn't sleep well the night before and you try to work out or stimulate your body the next day, you're just not going to be running as well as you could have if you had slept well. So very important as far as your physical abilities go. Emotional irrationality. This one, we become more irritable. We become a lot shorter to anger when we haven't slept as well. I think anyone that has had a baby in their life, as I have, didn't realize how important sleep was until all of a sudden you had a baby and you didn't get it. I remember when my son was born that if I slept, if I actually was able to get a decent night's sleep, I felt like I could handle the day. Whereas if it was a tough night of sleep where I didn't get as much, I was absolutely an emotional wreck. Like, it so affects how well you sleep, or how well you feel mentally if you're not getting enough sleep. So I think that is really important to illustrate. And big one, that not getting enough sleep can actually shorten your lifespan. It can cause early death. Did you know that you can actually die from not getting enough sleep? So it really does affect things long term, and is very important to realize that we do need to try what we can to get enough sleep. So how can you do that? One thing I recommend is try to promote a healthy circadian rhythm. What you can do is, as I mentioned before, the sunlight really affects how our 24-hour clock is regulated. So when you first get up in the morning, get outside and get some sunlight if you can. If you can't get outside for sunlight, try to get some just light. Having that bright light early in the morning can help to trigger your body to get into that cycle. It says, okay, we're done sleeping, the bright light's time to wake up. And if you think back to our hunter-gatherers, they had to go outside and look for breakfast. So they didn't just have, a bagel or, cereal sitting there ready to be eaten. So if you can get outside, have some sunlight, maybe a light walk before you actually eat, that can be very good for promoting a healthy rhythm. Trying to get your bright light early in the day, exercise earlier in the day. And then as you get into the evening time when the sun starts to go down, also mimic that with the lighting in your home. Dim the light slightly, try to bring that light down to help to mellow the mood, trigger your body to release that melatonin, which is what helps us fall asleep initially, and use the lighting in your favor there. Now, you want to also create some good sleep hygiene, and there's lots of things that may seem obvious, but sometimes it's good to have a reminder on these things. A hot bath or shower before bed is not only, comforting, but it actually helps to momentarily raise your body's core temperature, which will help your core temperature come down more effectively when you get into bed and start to sleep. So you want to have a dark, quiet room. Any small amount of light and noise can absolutely affect your sleep. Even if you think that you're sleeping through some noise or a little bit of light, you may not be able to get into that deep phase 3 non-REM sleep as well if you have those things around you. Again, I mentioned core temperature is important, so creating an environment in your room that the temperature is cooler. 65 to 68 degrees is kind of ideal. Some of us in Arizona here might be able to withstand a little bit warmer, but just make sure overall that the room feels cool to you. And avoid distractions. Don't let your pets sleep with you. Don't let your children get up and sleep with you if you can avoid it. You really want to not have your phones by you where you could get a call or something in the middle of the night. You want to avoid those distractions that could disrupt your sleep. And I always think it's a great idea to possibly consider getting a sleep tracking device, like the Oura rings or many, watches and stuff that can track your sleep these days. Can be very beneficial for you to see if you are getting into that deep sleep. How much deep sleep are you getting? If you fall asleep, but you're still waking up in the morning and you are feeling still exhausted and not well rested, you can look back and to see what's going on with your sleep. And maybe there's a reason you're not getting enough of the deep sleep, or maybe your REM sleeps are cut short. So using a sleep tracking device can be really great for increasing your awareness on how well you're actually sleeping. And how to improve your sleep. Melatonin, I mentioned, is our hormone in the body that helps to regulate our sleep. It really plays a big role in just helping us fall asleep. It's released in the evening when the sun goes down, and that stimulates our mind to say, okay, it's time to get into bed and go to sleep. It is not effective at staying asleep. So if you are supplementing melatonin, if your ailment is having a hard time falling asleep, that might help. It can be great if you have jet lag or your circadian rhythms are off because of different varying reasons, maybe, night shift work or things like that. But it's not going to help you if you're really trying to stay asleep all night. Also, it can affect your body's ability to have its own melatonin, and it may not work for you in the long term. So if you're, using it for just, like I said, jet lag is a great example. If you, just traveled and your sleep cycle is off, melatonin can help get you back on a regular schedule, but it is not necessarily a great choice for long-term use. There are some great botanical and herbal options. Kava can help with sleep, valerian root, passion flower. Now, I also really want to be cautious because even though these are botanicals and herbal remedies, they can still be quite powerful. So some of the way, rather than taking a valerian root capsule where you really have no way of knowing how much valerian root is actually in it, I really like tea. I think that tea can be a much more mellow and natural way for you to absorb these botanicals. And it's also kind of nice and calming to help you have that little bit of comfort before you go to bed at night. Again, GABA, that neurotransmitter, can really help to cause some sleep and calming, as well as a 5-hydroxytryptophan has also been very effective at helping to induce sleep. Here are some wonderful resources that I do have available that I got a lot of my information. Some of my favorites, Dr. Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep, that was definitely one of the best books I've read in a while. So if you're interested in this and want some more information on sleep and how it affects us, that's a good choice there. And as well as some other information on Hans Selye that I did help get some of this information on. I am available to do nutrition consultations at the OsteoStrong at McCormick Ranch in Scottsdale is where I do most of them. I can do consults for members and non-members. So if you are already a member at OsteoStrong, excellent, you can book that consultation with me. But even if you're not a member and you're still looking for some nutrition support, that 1-hour nutrition consultation can really be catered to whatever it is you want to focus on. If you want to talk about bone health, stress and sleep are always things I do ask people about in a nutrition consultation, but maybe you do have some food intolerances or allergies, or maybe you're dealing with IBS and you're trying to figure out how to navigate what you can and cannot eat. I can really tailor that to whatever you want to focus on. So please give us a call there, and that can be very helpful and get you on the schedule. And then lastly, if you are not yet a member of OsteoStrong and would like to learn more about how it can help you, this QR code right here can help to get you connected so you can have an introductory phone consultation as well as some special member offers that we do have. So that can get you connected there. Now, I do have the opportunity for some questions, and I have had a few that have come in. First one is from Jen, and she wanted to know if I could elaborate a little bit more on the vitamin K, vitamin D, and how that affects with the competition that we discussed. And Jen, that is a great question, and it's really frustrating sometimes when I see that most supplements, because they're bone health nutrients, lump them together and say, here you go, here's all your nutrients for bone health, without realizing that they can compete for absorption. And now I don't want you to think that your supplement is not effective. You are still going to be getting some of those nutrients, but you got to think that when you combine them both at the same time, they're both going to be trying to get absorbed when they break down. And some of it may get flushed out with the body if there's not enough receptor sites for both vitamins. So if you can, ideally, it is best to take them separately. Again, we have that nutrients multivitamin here that does separate those nutrients that compete for absorption. Or if you do know how much of a dosage that's appropriate for you for those, you can buy them individually and just take them with at least 2 hours difference so that they're not in the gut at the same time. And then also be keeping in mind that eating them with other food, like if you're taking the anti-competition vitamins, if you eat them with other food, you're combining them with other nutrients that could also be affecting their absorption. So having them, more on an empty stomach with a little bit of fat soluble, like a little bit of fat, so you can help with the fat soluble vitamins, that can be best. So I hope that answered your question. Again, don't completely disregard your regular supplements, but if you can, it's good to be aware that vitamin D and vitamin K can compete for absorption. All right, I also have another question here from Ollie. He's wanting to know about the effects of strontium on bone health and nutrition. And that is an excellent question. Strontium has historically had some issues in the past. Years ago in the UK, strontium renolate was being actively used for bone health. And they found, number one, that it created a lot of issues with kidneys. There was all sorts of horrible situations out there. So they had outlawed the use of strontium renolate. Now, not only did it affect kidneys, but it also tended to the question was that strontium is a heavier element, that it can kind of give you a false positive on bone density. It can actually, the discussion was that it can actually make your bones appear to be denser than they are. So now, years later, they've used this information that they had from strontium malate and all its detriments, and they have actually, we carry AlgaCal, and there's also a couple other forms of strontium out there, or a couple other, excuse me, companies that carry strontium. And the newer form is strontium citrate, which is a much more natural form of strontium. It's easier and gentler on the body. It does not have all those issues that strontium renolate did years ago. So you don't need to be as concerned about the health related consequences, because strontium citrate is actually found to be very safe and effective. Strontium's role in the body is that it helps to push the calcium into the bones. So we, take our multivitamin or eat food that has calcium in it, and that gets it into the bloodstream. But we need something to help tell that calcium to get more effectively into the bones, and that's what strontium citrate does. With regard to it masking the bone and possibly giving a false positive on bone density, showing that you've increased bone density when you have not, it is a very, very minimal amount that it can affect that. Yes, it is a stronger mineral that it can show up that way, but say you increase 10% in bone density by taking strontium and calcium together, it's about a very small amount, like 1 to 3% of that entire increase can be attributed to the strontium. So it still can be very, very effective at helping to build bone. So hope that clears up any questions that people have about strontium. Strontium citrate can be safe and very effective at helping to get calcium into the bones. So thank you very much. And I don't have too many other questions, but again, if any of you would like to get more information about anything that we have here, you're welcome to contact us at OsteoStrong, or there is the information on the McCormick Ranch location. I'm available for nutrition consultations as well. So I do appreciate you all being present here today. And I hope you have a wonderful day and help keeping your bones nice and strong in the future. Thank you.